Hi everyone, CJF Hotshot here, and yes, today we're doing the Howard Porter video. For the past few videos, I've been promising it, and this is the time you're finally getting it. Sorry it's a little bit late compared to like when I asked on Twitter, I think about a month ago. But yeah, let's just jump in, because I want to talk about this legendary artist who surprisingly hasn't had that many books, so it's like really easy to go through his publication history instead of going through broad strokes of his style. So, in the mid-90s, Howard Porter started working with, I think, Christopher Priest on The Ray. This was pretty much like Howard Porter, like, just starting off at DC. So, he had a very, like, house-style approach. Although, The Ray's face was always in a shadow for some reason, which I think is, like, for, like, a dramatic build-up, and to, like, be a little bit separated from books, like, from the past. They wanted the Ray to be a statement, and that's definitely what it was. However, it's not the style that he went for the rest of the 90s, 2000s, or even the one he goes for right now. Because the style from the 90s started in 1997 when he started working on the JLA relaunch with Grant Morrison. This is where you get like Howard Porter's signature look. Still quite house style though, but like you can see where the detail pops, and it's obvious that Howard Porter does like to draw these group scenarios whenever possible, and you kind of really see that here, and I really like it. You also see, like, from his Flash covers at the time, because believe it or not, he did some Flash covers at this point in time. Howard Porter was experimenting with looking a little more like Mike Wieringo's style, to where, like, unless you're like specifically reading Flash by Mark Waid book 6, where it says this cover is by Howard Porter and this cover is by Mike Wieringo, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart really, which is really handy, because like if you're going right away and you're going to the level of being very similar to one of my favorite artists, you're definitely like one of the best. Like Howard Porter's name was honestly like made during Grant Morrison's JLA, and even Mark Waid's Tower of Babel. So he took a few years off after that, and then he started working on The Flash in 2004 and ending in 2005. It was supposed to be a 2-year contract, but was shortened a little bit due to, I think, some health issues that he had later down the line, because like sometimes health issues start to creep up slowly, and I think that's what started to happen here. Don't quote me on that. But his Flash work is fine. Like, ironically, his Flash work in the 2000s might be some of his, like, less interesting work. It might be a couple of things. It might just be that James Sinclair, at this point, was so used to working with Scott Collins that it was much easier to, like, colour for Scott Collins than it is for Howard Porter. At that point, Howard Porter was very much more of a house-style artist. It could also be the inking. Like, there are lots of factors that go into making a book. Like, sometimes when it just doesn't fuse together right, it just doesn't fuse together. But it's still serviceable, and it's definitely better than Flash Ignition. So we take Howard Porter art where we get it, I think. And it's honestly still quite good. Like, there's some scenes where, like, specifically with, like, Zoom, actually, where his style really pops, and he sees, like, Zoom's vibration, temporal waves. Although that might be because, like, Zoom, in theory, is a fun character to draw, just because you can kind of do whatever you want to like separate him from the speedster aesthetic if you want to convey a different way of motion and fluidity. So yeah, his time on The Flash did range from awesome to awkward, which I don't blame Howard Porter for. He had a hand injury in 2006 when he was about to start working on a Captain Marvel Shazam book. I have to say both now. Yeah. So he was unable to finish that, so he took another few years off of comics to heal from the hand injury, and because like he had like a nerve injury in his hand, so he just took a few years off to heal, and then returned to comics in 2008 with a slightly different style this time, probably one easier on his hand, but also one that's a little more simple compared to the style he ran with in the Jeff Johns Flash run. At least in my opinion, it's a bit more simple, but it definitely works for him in Titans 2008. Yeah, he managed to stay on to another team book. Like, imagine like coming back after an injury and deciding, you know what, one of the first things I'm gonna do is, after my long-term absence, I'm gonna draw a team book. You know, a book that sometimes requires me to draw like 8 characters on a splash page. Yeah, I'm gonna do that book. Like Howard Porter, workhorse. And of course, at this time, after finishing his stuff on Titans, he also moved to Magog with Scott Collins. Scott Collins is a writer and Howard Porter is an artist for a bit. And yeah, it's very strange to see both of these artists work together. Yeah, some people don't know that Scott Collins was also a writer. But in the current day, he's still famous for runs on Justice League and Flash. The books he started with are still the books that he's most famous for, because he's returned to the books. Justice League with Justice League 3000, and I think a bit of Scott Snyder's run, and The Flash with some variant covers here and there, and the big moments of Joshua Williamson's run. Basically, every important arc except the first one that, like, has speedster battles. Those arcs, that's when Howard Porter comes in. Happens in Running Scared, Flash War, Flash Year 1, even though that wasn't really a speedster battle, but like it was sold as an important arc. A bit of Flash Age, and the last 2 issues of Flash Finish Line. Like, Howard Porter's like dotted all throughout the run. Even the Button. The Button surprising, but like, you know, even the Button, like that was his first appearance. Like that was Howard Porter's return to the Flash book. Like that was amazing. That's probably the only reason why you could consider the Button to be good, is that you bring a legendary artist back to bring back legendary characters. And nowadays he's still working on books. 2021, he started a run on Deathstroke Inc. with Joshua Williamson. And later he did some Batman work with Joshua Williamson. So even like Joshua Williamson has said in interviews, he said, I work on so many books and I like to have Howard on at least one of those books because it's really fun to work with him. So overall, I do like Howard Porter. He's probably one of the best in the industry. Although I don't think like certain styles like work for him, because of course writers have a tendency to use Watchmen grids. Like you see this with Tom King, and for a bit you saw this with Joshua Williamson, where they tried to like squidge their artists into like smaller panel grids, so which might be easier for the story and the storytelling, but it doesn't let the art shine, because like the artists are drawing smaller figures, smaller character figures, you know. So with someone like Fernando Pasarin, who's like Fernando Pasarin is like very able to like make smaller characters in like large backgrounds, whereas with Howard Porter, not necessarily the same way. Like Howard Porter sings on a splash page, you know? And it's really infuriating to see these Watchmen grids in Flash Year 1, because you can tell these are roughs. You can tell these are roughs, and that Howard Porter's style just doesn't translate as well into Watchmen grids. They might be smaller than Watchmen grids, actually. They're just like what you know a Watchmen grid as. But honestly, it is very impressive that Howard Porter returned to comics at all. Like, after a hand injury, some skill just, for some people, just goes away. And I'm glad it didn't for Howard. And that is remarkable. And it is honestly a testament to how great of an artist he is, because he still puts up really good work to this day. Although it does depend on the colorist sometimes. Like, he's really good with hi-fi, I think. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you all soon. Let me know in the comments below which artists you want me to speak about next. Yeah, alright. See you all later, everyone.